Hey guys, I want to give y'all just a little brief update on a part of my service career that I always think it bores people to tears when I talk about it. But I want to give you just a little upgrade of what I did, in part of my service career. When I first went in, I went through the basic training. I also went through technical school. I volunteered for a thing called worldwide service. And what I wanted to do was to be a crew chief on one of these. Now, that crew chief, that involves a lot. It don't sound like much, but that's quite an involvement. Well, I got to be that at my first base I went to, which was down in Louisiana. And, we had F-100s there. That was our aircraft. Well, all of a sudden, after the intense training, then I got down on the flight line and got our orders on it. And my Sergeant Huggins, who was our flight line superintendent, comes to me and he said, "Langford," I said, "Yes, sir. You're going to be on this bird right over here. It's number 530. Said, your responsibility. So I guess we called you a crew chief, but he said, that's what we do. So he said, don't let me down. Yes, sir, I got that. Now, he said, you volunteered for worldwide status. He said, I don't know if you know what that means, but he said, that's a pretty big deal. So when we go on one of these TDYs, TDY meaning temporary duty assignment, he said, you're responsible for everything. Now, he said, some of these cases, we won't have an engine guy, and we won't have a tire changing guy. And he said, that's going to be you. So he said, bone up on these things here as much as you can. And then when we get on TDY, if your bird has some, say if a pilot comes in, got a cut tire or whatever on the thing, it's going to be up to you to change that. So don't be thinking we're taking support for every function on this bird, which we're not. Now then, one thing I wanted to do too, the F-100 had a J57 engine in it with an afterburner. And there were fixed cylinders on the afterburner on it, and then the engine came later in another aircraft was a J79, which was an F4, but they had variable vanes on the afterburner, which just meant more power, less stall on the compressor of the engine itself. But what we done too, while I was there here in stateside training, was when we go TDY, the experience that you gathered from these, immeasurable. A lot of times you had to go to manuals, and sometimes you'd ask people that had been on this stuff before, yeah, you do this or this sort of thing, but you've done, and it's kind of in today's slang, if you will, you had to do whatever needs to be done to get the mission accomplished, and you want the pilot safe, so when he comes out there to fly, he's going to say to the crew chief, is you ready to go? And they'd come out to me and they'd say, Sergeant, this thing ready to go? I said, yes, sir. Well, he said, if you're so sure about it, would you go up with me if I ask you? And I'd say, yes, sir. All right, he said, good. I'm not going to inspect it. I'm going to take your word at it. Well, yeah, each one on the thing, then you get to thinking, did I check everything? And yes, you did. So, of course, when you send the pilot up, you got him right there. Well, luckily I had none, go down. So even in the war, didn't have any of those go down. So when he comes back in and lands, you're like, whew, okay. It's not that you had something wrong, but it makes you think about it each and every time they go up and they say, everything good on it? Yes, sir. Well, in Vietnam, we had F-100s, had some 102s, had different birds there. And also, I got to work some there in the war on F-4s. And then when I came back to the States, came back to Peterson Field in Colorado, and that's where the Air Force cadets train. They train on T-33s. Unique engine on that thing. It doesn't have afterburner, but it does have this uncannily long tailpipe. Well, it's bad to get heat concentrated in that and to get a lot of cracks in those tailpipes. One of the duties as a crew chief was each morning before any flight, or part of the flight inspection that you was doing, you crawled up in the tailpipe with a flashlight, checking around for any cracks. Because if that crack got too big, let that heat go through and get into the mainframe or into a fuel cell, and down would go the bird. So that's just one of the checks you had to do, and it was pretty tight quarters. If you're claustrophobic, I wouldn't suggest going up in the tailpipe of a T-33. But we had the time that we had, or I had, at the training there in Colorado Springs for the cadets, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Them cadets would come out there and they're like, oh, they're macho, they're all ready to go. And the pilots took it as kind of a rite of passage to see if they could make them cadets sick. And most of them did. Well, they carried a little sick sack thing, They had, if you get sick, don't mess up the crew chief's aircraft. but some of them would anyway. It's too quick and it's all over everything. Anyway, that's the subset of that. I also had in the service a grand opportunity to get to work on some of the actual F-100 birds that the Thunderbirds used. They were stationed in Nellis, Nevada, and I was in Colorado at the time. And they came up to do a show at the cadet field there for one weekend, big show we had there. They couldn't bring any of their crew. Well, I was the only crew they had. Well, I got a field promotion out of that, and also got an invitation to go to Nellis. And I worked on them for a while down there and could have went further had I re-enlisted for more time, which, you know, it's anybody's guess. Maybe I should have, maybe I shouldn't have, but I did have a grand time with that. And then later on, well, you know, as my career furthered and got toward the end, I said, no, my dreams come true about what I got to work on, the engines I got to work on, the aircraft I got to work on, and I'll stop it off from there.